to the board of directors a month ago, there hasn't been many things in my adult life that have left me with a loss for words. But this honor has definitely caused me to pause, to reflect, and even hesitate in accepting this nomination. The amount of talent and generosity, influence, and sophistication in this room is just unbelievable. And for you to place this trust in me, how could I say no? Now, many of you know a little bit about my background. Some of you know more than others. And our speakers earlier from the Lord's Place and Place to Help told stories. So I like that theme. So I'm going to tell a story as well. But I'm going to tell it with pictures. Is this screen working? Is it working? Is there a white screen there?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so the purpose of me telling you my story is to demonstrate how a strong family unit, augmented by the support from a community full of agencies like the ones we support, can play a role in transforming the lives of very real people like my families. On January 29, 1973, my parents welcomed their first child into the world. My brother and sister joined us in 1974 and 1975. I know that there are well-traveled individuals in this room who have been to places on this earth that I can only dream of, but I would be surprised if any of you have visited the places like birth, Guyana. The first people in Guyana actually made their way from Asia through the Americas about 35,000 years ago. The Carib Indians migrated through the Guyanas and into the Caribbean islands by boats long before the Europeans arrived. Guyana was initially colonized by the Dutch in 1616, who used African slaves to work the sugarcane and tobacco plantations. The British gained control of this territory in 1814, and after slave trade in the African slave trade was abolished, indentured laborers from India took over the fields. Most were actually unpaid. They really weren't indentured. Like the U.S., Guyana achieved its independence from the British Empire in 1966, but her story has had a different outcome thus far. Although Guyana is synonymous with the Jim Jones cult, as many of you know, it should be recognized as a place of tremendous natural beauty. As you can see, right? Is there? Okay, as you can see, I usually have a thing in front of me. As you can see, most of the country is undisturbed by development and truly pristine. Guyana's population is concentrated on the northern coast with less than a total of 800,000 people in the entire country. Palm Beach County alone has about 1.4 million people living here. Unfortunately, it is a very poor nation. Like many third world countries, there is widespread political corruption. What am I looking at? Oh, I'm sorry. Is there something there?
Yes.
Okay. All right. There's widespread. I'm messing up my flow here. Honestly, there's widespread political corruption and crime is rampant. There is a major disparity in income. 40% of the Guyanese people live in poverty, as defined by the Guyanese government, and maybe actually about 90% if we use our standards. The current minimum wage is equivalent to 50 cents per hour as compared to US dollars. The GDP per capita is $3,700 as compared to the GDP per capita in the US, which is $53,000. Almost 15 times higher. There is also a major disparity in housing. Many dwellings still do not have running water and proper sanitation facilities. This is the house that I lived in before moving to the U.S. A 500 square foot structure made of 2x6s and a tin roof. But it was our home and the best that our parents could provide for us at the time. We had no running water, We had limited electricity because of rolling blackouts and no modern sanitation facilities. Luckily, our little family received an opportunity that millions of people have risked their lives to achieve, a chance at the American dream. Fortunately for us and the rest of our extended family, my uncle, who was my dad's eldest brother, had a major disagreement with my grandfather in 1968 and didn't just threaten to leave home, he left the country. He moved to New York that year after receiving a visa to attend an auto mechanic school. Little did my uncle know that his future bride was also on her way to America in 1968 on a freedom flight from Cuba to Florida for political refugees. In 1969, they met in New York, married shortly thereafter, and became citizens in 1976, which gave them the ability to begin sponsoring family members. After a couple of years, after a few years when they visited Guyana, our family's sponsorship was approved, and we moved to Cleveland, Ohio, in October of 1979. Is Cleveland on the screen? Is Cleveland on the screen? Yes. We had nothing more than a couple of suitcases full of old clothes and a little bit of money still left over from the plane tickets we had to buy for the five of us. My uncle and aunts had moved to Cleveland in 1977 so he could take a position with General Motors. By the way, I learned this past weekend that even though they didn't have much, my uncle was contributing to United Way through payroll deductions when he was working at GM. And I learned that my aunt was also contributing when she worked at Target through payroll deductions. So they'd been a United Way supporter, much to my surprise. After a short stay with my uncle and aunt, our family lived with my grandfather in a small two-bedroom apartment in a not so very nice area of inner city Cleveland. He had arrived a year earlier. My parents worked multiple jobs in different factories, and my dad was also a night watchman during our early years, rarely seeing one another. We didn't have a car, so they relied on public transportation and their feet to get to work during our first ever Cleveland winter. Not an easy transition from tropical Guyana. But they were determined to give their children the best opportunity to achieve success. Failure was not an option. The promise of America gave them hope. We were lucky to have a strong family support from my uncle and aunt to help us through our first few years. They brought us groceries, they helped pay bills, and they were there for us every step of the way. But my family's support alone may not have been enough. Despite their pride, our parents counted on agencies similar to the Lord's Place and Clinics Can Help and so many of the other agencies that are supported by United Way to help fill the gaps. We received food from food pantries. We received coats and boots through nonprofit clothing drives. And we were able to develop a modest wardrobe through Goodwill. As a child, the transition to America was scary for a 6-year-old. It was cold and getting colder. The landscape was unfamiliar. We didn't see our parents much do the work. The kids at school were not approachable. My English wasn't very pure. I was bullied. I later became a bully too. And little did we know that the Cleveland Browns would break our hearts for the next 3.5 decades. But seriously, the temptations and distractions of gangs and drugs were everywhere, but this was America, and our parents were told, if you work hard, you will make it, and work hard they did. My parents didn't have much of a formal education, but they knew that would be the key to their children's survival and hopefully their success. Education was the family's top priority. School was difficult at first for us, but our parents taught us that we didn't have to be the smartest to succeed. We just had to work hard. After several years of hard work and saving, we eventually bought our first home in 1983, just 4 years after arriving in America, and achieved that American dream. By 1985, our little family became official citizens of the United States through my parents' perseverance. As we further acclimated to our new life, the hard work and sacrifices began paying off. We were self-sufficient. Our parents had good jobs. My brother and sister and I were doing great in school. What's on the screen?
Sweater.
Let me tell you about this sweater. I recently learned from my mom the story of this sweater. I didn't know this sweater existed. I recognized it when she sent me the photo. This sweater hangs in my dad's closet in Ohio. This sweater was purchased by my dad for 10 cents from Goodwill about 35 years ago when they were struggling to make it. Michelle? He has kept that sweater this entire time as a reminder of what we had to go through and how much we have to be grateful for. So I wanted to share that little story with you. Sorry. Understanding that education was our family's top priority and seeing how hard they worked to give us opportunities, I eventually graduated from high school with honors and left for college at Bowling Green State University, where I would meet my future wife freshman year, Anne, and kept me out of a lot of trouble because my parents were very strict growing up, and when those kids who were raised straight leave for school, things tend to happen. So thank you, Anne, for keeping me on the straight and narrow. My career choice was public service. Maybe there was a subconscious draw to a profession that solely focuses on protecting and improving the lives of communities. And I bounced back and forth from community to community in the Midwest. Both of our girls were born in Indiana. My eldest was born in Bloomington. She's a true Hoosier. My other daughter, my youngest daughter, Miranda, was born in Hammond, Indiana, which is kind of Chicago. But eventually, we landed in Palm Beach. And the years that followed have been unbelievable. All three of my parents' children graduated from college and have achieved advanced degrees. We are all married and have given my parents 5 granddaughters and a grandson. Although we are separated geographically, with my parents and brother in Ohio, my sister in North Carolina, and Ann and I here in Florida, we make sure we see each other throughout the year. We get together for holidays, we go on vacations together, and we celebrate our accomplishments. In the end, isn't family all that really matters? Now, about Palm Beach. I'm compelled to take this opportunity to thank this community for embracing me and my family when we arrived a little over 10 years ago. The town has been a remarkable place to serve, first as Director of Recreation, and now as your Deputy Town Manager. Can you imagine a poor little immigrant child from a third world country could become the Deputy Town Manager for the town of Palm Beach? How did that happen? And today you all have further honored me and indirectly my parents too, through your trust in my abilities to serve as your next chairman. Please understand that the money and the time you've all invested in United Way is tremendous, it's very appreciated, but what really matters to people is the fact that you care. You're concerned and you're committed to transforming individual lives like others did for my family. The Dalai Lama has 2 sayings that have resonated with me for many years. He says that our main purpose as human beings in this life is to help others. And if we can't help them, at least do not hurt them. He also says that the more we care for the happiness of others, the greater is our own sense of well-being. And that I hold on to those statements every day, especially with my service to nonprofits. In closing, I'd like to introduce you to the 4 people who shaped my outlook on life at a very young age through their non-judgmental support of others and concern for the happiness of family and strangers alike. I want them to stand. My Uncle Murphy.